Good morning, Peg. How are
Joan
you?
Sustersic,
Yes.
previously known as
Anne Sustersic. I didn't go back to my
you didn't go
baptismal
back.
name.
Okay, we'll cover that later. All right, well, I want to thank you for coming to share your story with us. You're the only one that can do that, so we're very happy that you're here and you're all hooked up. So let's start at the beginning. We'd like to ask you to tell us something about your beginnings, as much as you'd like us to know. Your family, siblings, where you come from, where you're schooling, etc. So,
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1942, and I'm the eldest of 3 children.
okay.
I was Anne. My brother, who's 4 years younger, is Joseph, or Joe. And my sister, although she doesn't care for the name, is Mary. My parents were older when we were born. They were probably in their early 30s when they got married. And so when my mother was going to have another baby, she offered that I could name her.
Oh,
None of us had middle names. It was Anne, Joseph, and Mary. So I chose the name Mary. And my sister she said, really, you could have done Mary, Joe Mary, Jane Mary. But she's just plain Mary. So when we were confirmed, we took those as our middle names. Anne Margaret, Joseph James, and Mary Rose, although she doesn't use the rose. So we were a good Catholic family. We would pray the rosary in the evenings. All of us went to St. Lawrence School, including my father and mother. St. Lawrence was the parish school, and Sustersic is a Slovenian name. So there were many vocations from the parish, and I happened to be one of them when we were out of school. But I also went to Hoban, Dominican for 4 years. When I thought perhaps God was calling me, I used to stop in church on the way home, make visits, And then I approached my father, who was very supportive. He had been in the Crozier Order in Minnesota for 2 years. He learned Latin, he learned Greek, but his physical health did not permit him to stay. So he came home. And I think he figured that I was, assuming his vocation. My mother, on the other hand, had started a hope chest for me, some of which I brought with me when I entered.
it didn't have a
The
black
sheets
skirt.
No. One of the women that my dad worked with was a seamstress, so she made the black postulant's clothes. And eventually my mother came around, but I think her concern was my brother and sister were 4 and 6 years younger than I. They probably wouldn't remember me, if I was in and sent farther away. And that was just about the time that we became provinces.
Okay.
Chicago, California, the different regions. And I guess my mother figured that if I got as far away as California, she'd probably never get out there, and I'd have a harder time coming home. So after my dad died in 1964, I was in Joliet with Sister Jean Phillip as a postulant. Then after profession, I went to Rockford, Illinois with Sister Joan Connie Kelly, and was there for almost 4 years. And I expected to go back. But when the appointment came, it was for St. Henry's in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. I did not ask for it, but I think Mother Gerald thought, having lost my dad, it would be good for my mother if I were a little closer.
And how did she keep track of all of us? Weren't we about 2,400 or 2,500 at the time? Some would include her. Mm-hmm.
But for a while, I thought they went according to, like alphabetical, because we had John Aline, Joseph Jean, Joan Lawrence, Joan Leo, all in Rockford.
Oh.
But, at some point, I think somebody figured it was a good idea, whether it was Mother Gerald or somebody mm-hmm. else. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed it. It was nice. St. Henry's was a changing neighborhood. Hoban Dominican was right next to St. Henry's. It was like, coming home to mm-hmm. Hoban. And I enjoyed working with the people.
Had you gone to school with some of them?
No, because I went to St. Lawrence. Well, yes. Mary Ann Darty, Mary Ann Supan, Mary Provat went to Hoban.
Okay.
But none of the families, that I knew from St. Henry's. But it was a good place. It was, as I say, changing, and it helped me to become more aware of the problems of the African Americans, and certainly got to love them all. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really mm-hmm. enjoyed it there.
Mm-hmm. That was in, 1966 area?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I was there when Hoban closed. So instead of having, house warming, they had a house cooling, because the convent at St. Henry's was turned into a community center. So the sisters who lived at Henry's went and moved in with the sisters at Hoban.
Nice use of the facility.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Very
yes. Good. So it was interesting to be at the school that you went, where you were educated, and then have them close it. It was a wonderful experience.
Now, you talk and speak about Hoban. Was there someone there, or even in your grade school, that was instrumental in your life, was a mentor, was just someone special?
Sister Helen Thomas was my sponsor.
Okay.
Actually, when I was looking to join a convent, I thought, well, let me see what the Carmelites have to offer. And I went out and I talked with them. They're wonderful women, but I just didn't figure that was where I belonged.
The cloister?
Yes, in Cleveland. I mean, that would put me closer to family.
But you could never see them?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Not every 3 years like we could when I first entered. And so
Sister Helen Thomas. Then.
Helen Thomas was she was my homeroom teacher and the person I confided in. And she helped me get things together. Very quiet, very, but I so much enjoyed her. And there were, I think, 3 who entered when I did from Hoban. Mm-hmm. But out of those 3, I'm still here, and the others chose other, options, which was fine. After St. Henry's, I went looking for another job. Not that I didn't like it, but there were a couple of lay principals, and I felt that I perhaps could work somewhere else in a different way. So I applied at Parmadale, which was a residential village for young people, and I was selected to be at the desk. However, when the secretary quit, the executive director asked if I would be a secretary, which I said yes. Then, after a few years, he was made pastor. And he asked if I would come with him to the parish. And nobody ever said no to Father Leahy. But I said, Father, I think, my ministry is with people and the kids here. He did not take it too well, but that's
you felt
life.
through discernment that that's where you were.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And Tom Wall, who was the not executive director, but the director under Father Leahy, assistant, became director of Parmadale. And I worked with him for a long time. And then when he was chosen to go downtown to Catholic Charities, he asked if I would come with him. And I did. And I really learned a lot there as far as working with board people and, taking minutes. Sister Jean Spora and I lived together at St. Henry's.
Your dear friend.
And at Hoban. And we had one car. We came and went together. So when I was talking to Tom, I said, I can take the bus downtown because I'm close enough. And he said a car had been donated to Parmadale. And he said, I would like you to use that car. You're going to be traveling in the evenings. It's not necessarily good for a person to be alone downtown. If you were my sister, I wouldn't let you travel alone. So I'm asking you to, take this other car and use it. So I did. And I was very grateful to him. He was a wonderful, wonderful person. Not only a boss,
and
but
they saw how wonderful you were. These guys certainly wanted to hang on to you. They knew the treasure they had.
Well, when I could see that there was a possibility that I might be selected to run for chapter prioress, actually that was my third time
To be
nominated.
okay.
The first time, my mother was still living, and she lived alone in the house, and I felt I needed to be there for her. The second time, my mother had just passed away, and I thought, well, it's too soon for me to make a decision. The third time, I had no excuses. And I was asked if I would put my name in for chapter prioress, because you remember when we reconfigured all the chapters, there was one in Detroit, one in Adrian, and then the Mother House chapter.
There were two in Detroit.
Two in Detroit, right. And then we...
Seat, Nokomis, and
Right.
Great Lakes.
Right. And then at that point, we decided to do one in Detroit, one in Adrian. And I was out of a job. And I thought maybe you'd like to have me as your secretary, but you already had one, so that was not a possibility. And when I went to the mother house, okay, let me see. I was in 2 years in Great Lakes in Detroit. And it was that time that and I was elected. So then during the next 2 years, we were reconfiguring. That's when we did the Detroit and Adrian and Holy Rosary. And the sisters who were in Adrian, some of them said, would you ever be willing to run as chapter prioress? And I said, yes, I would. So when the time came, there were 2 of us who ran, and I was elected, possibly because I had known the sisters from when I came in from Detroit. And I must say that being chapter prioress was the most wonderful ministry that I could ever have imagined. I enjoyed working with the sisters, and when I came into Holy Rosary, I had wonderful people who helped to make the chapter what it is today. Some people said, well, you did a wonderful job. No, it was Leslie Hartway, it was, it was several of the sisters who came before us. Veronica Gonthier, Noreen McHugh, who had these ideas that we put together and came up with the way that the Holy Rosary chapter is currently formed. I mean, there have been some changes, but and then the sisters asked if I would serve one final year after my 6 years, because they felt that they needed a connection between the new people coming in and the sisters who were in Maria. And I told them that if they could get the permission, I'd be happy to do it. So they got the permission for 1 year, which was fine, and we kind of bridged between the new and the old, who had sisters here in Maria. And then my time was over. But it was just the most wonderful experience, and I can't say enough for all of the sisters that I've worked with.
And I think we realize that it's not it's not my chapter, it's our chapter, and the only way that it's going to work is if everyone takes ownership of our chapters. And I
That's
think
right.
No one person can do it all.
And, the sisters had to realize, I think when I said 1 year, they said, well, could you do another term? And I said, no, because it wouldn't be good for either one of us. You need to have the experience of somebody else, and they'll help you grow in another way. So.
Interesting. Your various calls, and very evident that you knew within you what you were being called to, what you had to do, what was best for the common good. I'm reminded of the changes of Vatican II, and how was that for you? With great oomph, you were able to grasp them all and come involved in them
at
all?
that point I was going to Hoban.
Yeah.
And the sisters, helped us to kind of come to see the new things that were coming in Vatican II. They provided us with experiences we had a Eastern Rite Mass that the priest was there. Some of the girls were Eastern Rite, Byzantine Catholic, and but it was good to be able to listen to the gospel in English, the preaching. Now, I believe, that we did the right thing. There are people who consider, the Latin rite to be their rite, and that's fine.
How did it affect you relative to the changes within the congregation?
I was in Cleveland for a long time, and I really, wasn't as much aware of what was happening in Detroit. You might have heard it, but you were busy with what you were doing, rather than, not that we didn't come into Adrian. We did. But, to see the numbers go down, that was hard. And I think some of the numbers went down because there were sisters who really weren't called, and they felt it was a good time for them to leave the vocation they didn't believe they had. So, I certainly can't condemn anybody for that. It was what it was.
You speak very positively about your various ministries, and it's evidence that perhaps the greatest or the one that you felt most blessed by or from was chapter prioress and
Yes.
leadership. And what do you think it was about that ministry that made it so special for you?
I think some of the sisters didn't really have a very good image of themselves. These are wonderful women. And when we had the mission council, the sisters were encouraged to run, to serve on the mission council. It wasn't any great burden, but they had contact with the other sisters. One of the sisters said to me, when she'd been principal several places, she said, "That was the best thing that I ever did. Thank you for encouraging me." I felt that I needed to help the sisters to see all that they had to offer. Even if it was just being a prayer, prayer and service, or prayer and presence. And I think that, overall, I wanted to be a servant leader.
And that you were was
Thank
very
you.
evident as you passed my door on occasion. Now, Sister Jean Anthony was
Yes.
your very, very dear, dear friend.
Yes.
You were so good to her, so supportive and loving of her. What did the two of you do for fun, to get away from work or to get away from whatever?
Well, she was from Michigan. Her home is in Michigan. She was missioned all her life in Ohio. So when I was elected, I knew I was not going to stay in Ohio and try to serve from there. So I said, do you want to stay here, or would you like to go back to Michigan? And we could live together there. So she chose to come back to Michigan. She tutored at the Literacy Center for a while. When we were in Cleveland, I'd come into mission group meetings, we'd visit with her family. We didn't do a lot of outside things, but we did with the parish and, people we knew.
So basically with each other's families as well. That's good. That's good. At this time of your life, what gives you energy and purpose?
Maybe my job, maybe, I don't have a lot of hobbies. Maybe I have no hobbies.
Maybe it's work.
But I enjoy being with people, and I enjoy being able to do something, to give something back. And I work in the Office of Information, so, there's a lot there that needs to be done. And hopefully I'm doing a good job.
And right now, all of you in that Office of Information are certainly grieving the loss of our sister Rose Celeste.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think we're all very, very conscious of that you have to go up and report and do it.
Thank you. And we appreciate all the
yes.
support that we've gotten.
Yeah.
Rose really was blessed, or we were blessed, because she was able to carry on as long as she did. But
and now we are blessed that we have women up there like yourself who are very dedicated to the ministry of the congregation. How would you like to be remembered?
As one who thought of others, who helped, the little guy. When I was at Parmadale, I always felt that I was closer to the people in the environmental, in janitorial, try to be good and kind to them. And I guess I feel the same way here. I'd like to be able to get along with everybody and make the people who work so hard feel very special, because they are.
Well, Sister Joan Sustersic, I thank you very much for telling your story. And you are one very special woman. And
Thank you.
We've crossed paths a significant amount of times. And it's very evident that you give untirelessly to the congregation and to the common good. So I thank you for your service, and try to find a hobby outside of work.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll work on it.
Yeah. Blessings to you.